I'm Georges Collinet of Afropop Worldwide from PRI, Public Radio International. This next Afropop Worldwide podcast is an excerpt from our Hip Deep program on Kulthum. You're in a packed concert hall in downtown Cairo in the late 1940s. On the stage, an elegant woman stands before an orchestra. She wears a full-length dress and clutches a handkerchief close to her breast. Her long hair is tied in a modest bun behind her head, but her fine jewelry suggests a woman of wealth. She stands perfectly still as she sings. But when she reaches a musical cadence that touches a nerve with the audience, they can barely contain themselves. There is no mistaking this as a performance of Egypt's immortal Kulthum, without question, the greatest Arab singer of the 20th century. Hello, Georges Collinet with you on Afropop Worldwide from PRI, Public Radio International. This Hip Deep edition, Kulthum, the voice of Egypt. You've heard me sing the praises of this extraordinary artist before. Well, today we're going to convince you. And to help us out, we have Harvard University's Virginia Danielson, author of a brilliant Kulthum biography, also called The Voice of Egypt.
When I've been asked before to try to find some kind of cultural equivalent in the Western world for Kulthum, it's exceedingly hard to do, partly because the separation between classical art and popular art is not so great.
Biographer Virginia Danielson.
If you took a musician with the competence of an Ella Fitzgerald, with the pure musical chops and ability in terms of rendition and improvisation, and combined that with a public persona such as Eleanor Roosevelt, a very dignified public figure who clearly had the good of the masses at heart in most of her enterprises, and then you give that public figure the audience of an Elvis Presley, you will have Kulthum.
Wow, that's serious. Ella, Eleanor, and Elvis all in one amazing package. Maybe you're starting to get the picture. Kulthum lived and performed through tumultuous times, British colonial rule and the coming of independence in Egypt, the partition of Palestine, a succession of wars, and fierce debates about how Islamic societies should and should not look to the West for inspiration. All that intensity seemed to rub off on Kulthum. But before we hear her story, I want you to listen to her voice. Open your ears and your heart and experience its sheer emotional power. All the music in this program was recorded in Egypt, mostly between 1926 and 1960. Sometimes the audio quality isn't all we'd like it to be, but the performances, my God, just listen. This is Hadith Al-Ruh, The Speech of the Soul, a song she performed near the end of her life.
من كان
In the 1940s, Cairo became home to foreign soldiers fighting in World War II. The war only intensified the debate in Egypt about national and cultural identity. Kulthum remained staunchly loyal to the Egypt for Egyptians philosophy, including the old idea that a singer should interpret poetry. She tipped the scales even further away from Western influences when she chose to sing qasida, classical poems that go back at least 1,000 years. Kulthum learned to sing these complex pieces as a child in her village, but qasida were not considered popular entertainment in Cairo in 1940. Here is Virginia Danielson.
Poetically, they tend to depend on historical and religious allusion. They tend to be jam-packed with meaning. They often use words that might sound to an English speaker the way Shakespearean English would. Syntactical structures and vocabulary that are just not very familiar. And so the entire language was perceived to be more remote than other contemporary literary forms. So with the religious songs of the 1940s, Kulthum also brought back the genre qasida, and people told her it would just never work, that no one was going to sit through this, they would become bored, that it would not be seen as entertainment, and in fact just the opposite happened.
Kulthum now began working with perhaps her greatest composing ally, Riyad al-Sunbati. Together with poets like Ahmed Rami and Ahmed Shawki, they transformed qasida into elaborate new classical creations that drove the Cairo public wild.
Musical performance throughout the Arab world historically is a very interactive art. In the context of sung poetry, the expectation would be that a singer would deliver lines of a poem to an audience who would immediately respond to the effectiveness of the delivery in terms of perhaps the choice of melodic mode, the engagement of the voice, the various attempts to bring out the meaning of the line, and the audience would respond immediately. When that happened, the artist would very often stay in that place in the poem for a period of time, working with that section of the poem until the audience had had enough, or until the singer ran out of ideas, or whichever happened first, and then move on. Now, this is basic to Arab musical performance. Whether it's instrumental or vocal, the interactiveness is a hugely important, historically rooted aesthetic, so that the audience has a major role in the outcome of the performance, in its length and also in its shape. This is very, very different from European classical music, where however much you like Beethoven's Fifth, it ends when it ends, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Thanks for podcasting with us. You can go to afropop.org to see beautiful photos of Kulthum and to read our full interview with Virginia Danielson. Well, by the way, what do you think of our podcast? We'd love to hear from you. Write us at info@afropop.org. Thank you. Until next week, this is Georges Collinet.